You're listening to Unmuted with Papamutes.
Welcome to Papamutes, everybody. My guest today is Christine Handy. Christine is an author, a model, a motivational speaker, a cancer survivor, and much, much more. I'm happy to have her on. Christine, welcome to Papamutes.
Thank you for having me.
So you're in Miami, correct?
I am. Can you hear the traffic?
No, but let's get to the good stuff. What's the weather like?
Very nice. 74 and sunny right now. You can see it through the mirror. Yeah, right here.
Oh.
That's the ocean.
I was going to say, is that the ocean? Sweet. But you were born in St. Louis, correct?
I am. I was raised in St. Louis, and then I lived in Dallas for a long time, and I moved to Miami in 2014.
Now, what was just briefly, your childhood in St. Louis like?
It was very small, I would say. I live a very big life right now. I have a very public persona, but I also I live in a big city. And St. Louis was small. It's a smaller town, but I also lived in kind of a bubble. And so we weren't really exposed to a lot of things. I love this example. When my son came to Miami to go to high school, he went to Miami Beach High School for a couple years.
Okay.
And there are about 167 ethnicities there. And I think in my high school there was one. And I love that for him because that's the real world.
Sure,
That's life.
Of course, yeah.
I didn't live in the real world. So when I started to have illnesses and things happen to me, you go from a higher high to a bigger fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I fell really hard.
Okay. At the age of 11, you started modeling, correct?
Correct.
Now,
yes.
how do you, 11-year-old just doesn't walk out of the house and go to the agency. And how did that start? What sparked it?
So I used to see a lot of not little letters that were in the mail that would come to me from modeling agencies and from pageants that would say, to the parents of Christine Donnie, that was my maiden name, we would love to represent her. And so I would open these and go, wow, I must be really pretty. Wow, all these people want me.
Wow.
And so I really wanted to do it. And my parents were like, no, we have other daughters at home. We just want everybody to, fit in a box and do the same thing. And I was like, I think I should do it. So ultimately I forged them into some sort of compromise to allow me to do it. And they had to take me to my modeling jobs until I was 16 and able to go unchaperoned myself. But until then, I had a flourishing career, and I'm still doing it at 51.
But I'm just curious, what made them send you, besides your looks?
Well, back then we didn't have any internet it was a long time ago. It was 40 years ago.
Right.
So it was really, correspondence only came through mail. Like nobody from the modeling agency would come up to your door and knock on your door and say, we'd like your daughter to model for us. So it would come in the mail. And there was plenty of them. And so I think with the amount, they thought, okay, these people are serious. And so there's a space back then and still now for child model.
Okay. All right. Now, at that point, were you like, yes, I'm going to be a model for life? At that early age, I mean.
I wasn't sure it would be for life, but I felt it deep into my bones that it was something that I really wanted to do. And I fought for it. Like I said, my parents didn't want me to do it. So I really fought for it. So when you fight for something, like your teeth are in it more, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And so I kept modeling. I kept modeling after I got married. I kept modeling after I had children. I kept modeling until I was about 35 and had surgery that prevented me from modeling at that stage of my life. But then I went back to it.
Now, your book, Walk Beside Me, how it came about to write a book.
About my journey. Well, I wrote the
Yes.
book because when I was going through breast cancer, I was unable to find a book like it. I wanted a book about a narrative that shared the story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I was gifted a lot of books when I was going through chemotherapy, and they were very helpful, but they were self-help books. There wasn't a novel about the journey. And so I thought, well, I have the tenacity, the ability to write the book and the knowledge. I had a bit of chemo brain afterwards, but I found the words and I figured out a way to do it. I had some help. And so I wrote the book and I published it and it became popular. And so then once the book was out, then I started to speak. And of course, I'd been in front of a camera for 30 years or so at that point. And so it was kind of a natural progression for me to start speaking in front of a camera. And I was a very good speaker. And so I got picked up by about 6 or 7 speaking agencies back in 2015. Now I work for more. And then I went back to modeling. So it was kind of the book, then the speaking career, and then social media influencer, and now back to modeling.
Now, was there a history of cancer in the family?
No, no. Only 20% of breast cancer patients or those diagnosed with breast cancer have the gene. So 80% they don't know.
Now, what brought you to the doctor?
Right. I felt a lump in my breast. And so I went to the doctor and they did a biopsy. And then 5 days later, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. I mean, I was petrified. I had an 11-year-old son and a 13-year-old son. Of course, my mind went right to who's going to have the privilege of raising my own children. And I had no idea how I was going to get through the battle. I knew that my form was aggressive because he told me on the first conversation it was aggressive. I didn't understand what that meant, but I knew that there was going to be a lot of fighting. And at that point in my life, I just really didn't have any fight in me. And so I knew it was going to be a big battle.
The first line in the movie, or sorry, in the book is, it's a warm day in September when I decided to kill myself.
Yes.
I mean, the book is
comforting, very comforting.
well, it sucked me in, I'll tell you. I mean, in a bad way, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So if someone reads this book, and I recommend it, what do you want them to get out of it? Even if they're not involved with cancer, never had cancer or anything.
Right. Well, and I think my book transcends cancer. It's about trauma. It's about hope. I think that I was very honest in the story. And I think with vulnerability, and when you share a story that is completely honest, then you can really allow people to feel less alone in their own plight. Because I think the world that we live in and with social media and highlight reels, we're all showing this one side of our life, which is it's disparaging to the rest of us because we're going, oh, wow, well, she's always on vacation. Oh, wow, she's always so pretty. That just doesn't exist. And so I wanted to write a story that was authentic. And so I did have suicide thoughts, and I wasn't ashamed of that. I was in a state of despair and agony, emotional agony. And that's not something that I don't discount those feelings. Those were very real. And those are important to talk about because so many people feel that feeling. And if we brush it aside or don't admit that it's there, then I think that discounts their feeling. And so I didn't want that to happen. And so it took me about 3 weeks to get out of that state of mind. And fortunately, I was able to, with the help of friends and family. Not everybody is. And so I felt like if I shared that part of my story, that might help somebody, get through that part of their story.
And you also had a serious wrist injury?
Yes. Yeah. That's a very sad story. I had a torn ligament in my right wrist, and I had a doctor in Dallas who was the best orthopedic surgeon, supposedly.
Right?
We labeled that. I labeled it. I mean, he was labeled. I labeled him. Other people labeled him. I bought into it, and he ended up being one of the worst human beings I've ever met in my life. I've totally forgiven him. He destroyed my arm, and I live in chronic pain.
Wow.
I have been in chronic pain for 11 years. It's changed my life tremendously, not just because of the scars, but because of the chronic pain. I used to, not so much anymore, but I used to my days used to be dictated by the pain, meaning, could I drive that day? Could I cook? Could I go out? Because the pain was so intense. And so I had that right before I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I just come off of a year of being bullied by a doctor. Now I'm diagnosed with cancer, about to go through breast cancer. And I'm thinking to myself, obviously I have no self-esteem because I allowed this man to bully me. I need to work on myself and who I am because I'll never get through this because I'm not going to fight for myself if I don't believe in myself. And now I have to face this disease that I don't know if I'm going to live or die. And so there are so many things that I had to work on right in the beginning. Like one, forgiveness for the doctor, 2, deal with the pain in my arm, and 3, figure out how I was going to live the rest of my life with no wrist.